Okay, this is a recording for hosts and people who want to do a SAHDPod podcast. Hosts of a SAHDPod podcast, I should say. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is actually... Okay, well, we've got somebody on the other line. What we have to do is start up first a Google Hangout. So let's get a Google Hangout going. Remember, because Google Hangouts is the way that we actually communicate with one another. I've already logged in, but if you're not logged in, you'll have to log in ahead of time. It's a video call, even though we don't use video. And the first thing that we do is we make sure that we go onto the original version. Now, when other hosts come back, they should come back muted. And if they do, they'll have to make sure that they go into the center of the screen and unmute. Okay, first thing we do is double check our settings, make sure that our microphone and our speakers are correct, which in my case they are. They're set up to USB codec, which is what they are. They should be different for your system. And then next what I'll do is I will send this link to the people that I wish to invite. In this case it will be David Torellio. Okay, and he should join the call in a minute, and then we'll take it to the next step of going into Zencastr. Guten Tag, Mr. Torellio.
Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, what I've just said in the introduction there was I was mentioning how the first thing that we do is actually we'll start a Google Hangout. Once we start a Google Hangout, we'll go in and we'll switch to the original version, and I will ask all of the co-hosts to switch to an original version, to which I'm going to ask you right now. Switch to the original version for me, mate. So top right-hand corner, 3 dots, original, and when you come back, you might come back muted. So make sure that you unmute yourself.
All right, how do I sound?
You sound fine. Okay, and the next step that you'll actually do is you will go to the gear setting, and on your end, not on my end, of course, and check your microphone and your speakers.
Gear and microphone is set up to my Samsung Q2U.
Bingo. Okay, so to this stage, we're set up for the Google Hangouts. If there are any additional people coming in, of course, we will wait till everybody is in Google Hangouts, everybody has checked their audio settings, and everybody is in the original version. And then we should be able to take it to the next step, which is Zencastr.
Okay.
That's for the studio audience, that, David. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we have. So if I'm talking, David, obviously I am talking to you, but I'm also going to be talking as if this is an instructional video.
Sure.
So you just have to realize that sometimes I might be talking to a third wall, to the fourth wall.
Okay.
All right, and now I'm in Zencastr on my end. David can't see it, of course, and I'm actually going to log into my account. Now, I have multiple accounts on my computer. I also have the SAHDPod account, which most hosts should use, and I also have my personal account, which is D. McPhee. Okay, so what we're going to do is actually use my personal account, because my personal account's set up, and I'm going to log in. Now, some of this should have been done in advance, like you would normally create a project in advance for the podcast. Since I haven't, since this is actually a podcast, it's actually going to be me talking to David Torellio. I'm actually going to use a previously used session that I have called David Torellio. Before we get to that stage, though, any hosts, especially if you're using the SAHDPod login for Zencastr, you should notice that there is a cloud drive connected, which is Dropbox. That needs to be reset every time you log in, every time, and it should be set up to the SAHDPod Dropbox account. Make sure that there are no problems. In fact, give it a little bit of a test ahead of time, because everybody has different Dropbox accounts. Everybody might have a different Dropbox account set up on their computer, and it may cause some conflicts. So what we need to do is just double check this. And I'm actually going to go in and get the correct Dropbox accounts set up for mine, which is obviously my personal one. Just bear with me 1 minute while I open up my personal password list that is somewhere that you can't see it. We use KeePass for this, so in advance somebody will be sent the KeePass password, the KeePass database with the passwords for Dropbox and for Zencastr. Okay, so in Zencastr, because that was the incorrect Dropbox account, I've disconnected it, which was the SAHDPod. the SAHDPod Dropbox account that was connected to the Zencastr. I need to disconnect that and actually connect the correct Dropbox, which in my case is my personal Dropbox, which is David McPhee. And sign in. Okay, and it'll refresh the system. And now I can see that my personal Dropbox is connected. Again, if you connect using Zencastr on another computer and you're using the SAHDPod, you also need to connect it to the SAHDPod Dropbox. That is important. And make sure that there are no glitches in the system, because that's, I think, where we've had some of our problems. Okay, again, I'm not going to create a project. Oh, yes, I am. I'm going to create a project, and I'm going to call this SAHDPod 102, and an ambitiously named episode. Okay, and here we go, and I am the only person in. Now, there will be double speak because we use Google for our VoIP. However, Zencastr also has built-in VoIP. So the first thing that you need to do is go in and turn off Zencastr's built-in VoIP. This is the default, and it will keep on coming back. So always make sure that the built-in VoIP is turned to the off position. Second, you need to go through and check that your microphone is correct. Third, you'll have to invite people to the call, which is what I'm going to do now with Mr. Torello, which I keep repeating so that I'll never, ever pronounce that incorrectly ever again. Okay, part of the reason that we use the original version of Google Hangouts is because the chat window is front and center. I'm sure there is a chat version in the beta, but I don't know where it is. Anyway, Mr. Torello, I've just sent you the link.
Okay.
Normally, the Zencastr link will be posted in the events page on the SAHDPod hosts group page in Facebook ahead of time. But because we're doing it Ask About Face, this is the way we're going to do it right now. Okay, and now that since Mr. Torello is in Zencastr, I'm going to make sure that he does the things that I did and check his microphone. So go to the top right-hand corner, David, and confirm back to me that you've checked your microphone and it's set to the correct settings.
My microphone is set to my Samsung Q2U microphone.
Okay. Now, normally this would signify that we were good to go, but you have to make sure that if there are any additional guests, that every single one of them is in Zencastr and has their microphone selected to ready to go before we go into the top left-hand corner and click the record button. And in fact, I would even take it one step further. Before we do any of this, in fact, before we even go into Google Hangouts, every user should go through and select sounds or select recording in their sound properties in their version of Microsoft, or if they're in Apple, in the Apple products, and make sure that their levels are set correctly, because they tend to bump all the way up. Now, this is something that I have to talk to the guy from Zencastr about and figure out what the hell's going on, because I think it might be a Google Hangouts thing. But again, make sure that your speakers are set to the lowest level you can possibly tolerate. The reason that we do this is to avoid crosstalk. If your speakers are set to too high, the volume will actually get out of your speakers and get into your microphone, which will create the other people being on your track, which is bad. So make sure that you check both of these things before you actually go into Hangouts. And then even after you're in Hangouts and after we're in Zencastr, check them again. All right, David, you're on, and now we're going to initiate a record. Now, the first thing I would do is I'd say to David, are you ready? Are you ready, David?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and then what I would do is go into the top left-hand corner and click record. Okay, David, we're going to talk for a couple of minutes because we need to explain what the different icons are in the Zencastr, just to explain what people should see as normal progress.
Okay.
Firstly, though, you'll notice that the wave bar is moving on my end. Each person should see a wave bar. If that wave bar is moving, then your voice is being picked up by Zencastr and you are being recorded. Is your wave bar moving on your end, David? Please speak for me.
It's beginning to move now as I speak.
Okay. Now, I'll let you talk for a couple of seconds, David. You can just tell me about what it was like to podcast last night. And the reason that we're doing this is because if you look next to my name on the left-hand side here, in the bottom corner of it, you will see a greenish or light greenish histogram. That's actually my voice being recorded and actually shows what my levels are. Since David hasn't really said much, we can't see his histogram yet, so we're going to need him to talk so that we can actually register that, one, his audio is registering, and two, it's registering at a correct volume. Okay, David, do you want to tell me a little bit about what happened last night with the podcast?
Yeah, last night I got on a little bit later than everybody else. It was really well organized. I feel like everybody had a lot of good content talking about vacation pasts and vacation futures, and the reasons why we want to take vacations with families. The main purpose behind it all, and about wanting to create memories for our little ones as they start to get older, and what type of experiences what we want to relate to them that we had as we were growing up. So it went pretty well. We talked. The podcast lasted, I believe, about 40 minutes of content from the point I got on and when we started recording until the recording came to or as far as the podcast was concerned, it came to an end. And then there was about maybe another 15, 20 minutes where we were just talking over the podcast and what we thought and things that we could improve upon.
Okay. I'm just going to stop you there, David.
All right.
Not that it was an interesting discussion. It's just because I wanted to then take the video on a bit further. Okay, David was talking there, and what I could see, if I look into the bottom right-hand corner of his, next to his name is in Zencastr, I actually see his histogram. It's almost as loud as mine. It's certainly suitably loud. And one of the key things that we look for here is when I stop speaking, between when I've just started speaking again, there is a huge gap in audio volume. That is the portion at which David was speaking. That is what we should expect to see. What that tells me is that Zencastr is recording only my audio. The same in the case of David. It is only recording his audio. It is important because this is what they term a multi-ender podcast. Each person's track will just be their audio. So when we come to mix it later and we come to edit it later, we should just have their audio on the track. It just makes it easier to manipulate, to cut people out, and make the podcast in general tighter. Okay, David, I'm sorry, I just had to explain that. Is there anything that you can think of before I actually end this? Obviously, you just mentioned that you started the call once the call was already in progress, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that is bad. I just bumped my mic. What we want to do is have everybody in Zencastr before that record button is clicked. What it means is everybody's recordings start at the same point, meaning that everybody's recordings are synced to exactly the same start point. So that's something that all hosts need to make sure, that everybody is in Google Hangouts and in Zencastr at exactly the same time. Okay. Also, one thing that I forgot to mention that I'm going to have to go back and add to the beginning of this is that you can only use Zencastr in Chrome or Firefox. Now, I'm not exactly aware of how it works in Firefox, and for that reason alone, I would prefer that everybody uses Chrome, regardless of whether they are on a Mac, they are on a PC, or they are in Linux. Okay, David, before I end this call, is there anything that you can think of that I have probably missed in discussing this?
Other than the very end of the podcast, that's pretty much it. I took advantage of the mic mute feature when I was taking a drink or maybe clicking around on my mouse so as to not have that maybe come up on the audio recording.
Okay, I'm going to explain that.
Okay. Other than that.
Well, I'll explain that now and be done. When we record through two sources. Sorry, I shouldn't say we record through two sources. We record through one source, and we speak through another source. The audio that people hear comes through Google Hangouts. That is our VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. That is basically our telephone service. However, the audio that it is recorded goes into Zencastr. That is a different audio stream, even if the source is the same. So, for example, if somebody comes into the room and you don't want them to be heard by the other callers, you have to mute it in Google Hangouts. And if you don't want it recorded, you have to mute it in Zencastr. So think of it this way. Whatever goes into Zencastr is recorded. Whatever goes into Google Hangouts is heard. If you want to make sure that somebody coming into the room is neither heard nor recorded, you have to be sure to mute them not only in Zencastr, but in Google Hangouts. As a rule of thumb, I would recommend people mute Zencastr first, then mute Google Hangouts. When they come back into the call, unmute Google Hangouts, unmute Zencastr. Does that make sense, David?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and the last thing that we need to talk about, and again, this is the end of the call. Just assume that we've come to the end of the podcast. What we need to be sure of is that everybody's audio is uploaded. So what we will do is we will tell everybody the podcast, the recorded portion of the podcast is about to end. Now, when I say the recorded portion of the podcast, I don't necessarily just mean the podcast portion that will be uploaded to iTunes. I mean including the pre and the post show. Basically, you are deciding to end the call at this point because we want to record pre and post show and post that on SoundCloud for the hosts to hear. Often there's a lot of interesting things said before the show and said after the show that maybe won't be something that the general public wants to hear, but the hosts themselves might want to hear at another stage. They might even want to collect the audio for their own little collection. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, David, is I'm telling you I'm going to stop the recording. So effectively, we're going to be ending the call and going home.
Okay.
Okay, I've stopped the recording, and if you'll see, it's gone through the upload process. Now, David, what are you seeing on your end? Did it say MP3 uploaded successfully?
Yes, I received a green message that said your MP3 was uploaded successfully. Down in the solo tracks, it shows my name and the time of the event, how long it took.
Okay, until you see MP3 uploaded successfully, you do not leave Zencastr. If at this point there is an error message saying that your track is not finalized correctly, you have to make sure that you do not let the other person, the person whose track was not finalized, leave the call until you figure it out. Because what I have learnt today is if I try to log into the SAHDPod login on my computer, but it was Danny who logged in and used the SAHDPod login on his computer, it can create a problem. The problems, like things like uninitiated or unfinished or unfinalized tracks, have to be sorted on the computers that started the call. So if Danny was the host, that's one computer, and the person whose unfinalized track it is, in this case it would be David Torellia, it would have to be his computer. He would have to be logged in to the same browser, the same computer, and basically be in the same URL that is for Zencastr. I know that probably doesn't make 100% sense, but it will to people who are hosts, and if it doesn't make any sense, they need to speak to me about it. Okay, David, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Just to another place to check to verify that your audio was uploaded by your name in the left-hand side of the screen. It's your name, and then underneath will be all audio uploaded.
Okay, so that isn't on my end, but that is on the user end, so that's something that you need to look for. And I think that's it. I think that's probably all the hosts need to do for now. If the way I have my Dropbox up as well, I can actually see when the Dropbox is uploaded. If I'm using another Dropbox account, like in this, if I was using SAHDPod's Dropbox account, it would be different again. All right, David, I'm going to start this again, and instead of using my login for Zencastr, I am going to use SAHDPod's login just to see if we can find out if there's any problems with it. Are you okay hanging on the call with me?
That's not a problem.
Okay. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log out of Zencastr. So we're done as far as that previous call goes. And I'm going to log back in. And instead of logging in my name, I'm going to log in as SAHDPod, which is what most of the hosts who host after this should use. Zencastr is going to go to a paid model. We will only want one account when it goes to a paid model because effectively we'll all be paying for it. We don't want to pay for 5 accounts. We just want to pay for one. Okay. Now I'm going to log into SAHDPod. The first thing I've noticed is that the cloud drive is set to my personal Dropbox. I need to change this and change it over to SAHDPod's Dropbox. So let me just locate the password for that. And that will take 1 second. Actually, I think it's already set in the system, but first I would have to disconnect my Dropbox from Zencastr, connect to Dropbox. No, disconnect. This is one of the problems I think we have here, mate. It's looking for... see, it's wanting to connect to my Dropbox. Okay, first thing I have to do is I have to go into Dropbox, I think, and make sure that Dropbox is disconnected. Which it isn't. So log out. You don't see this on your end, David, but apparently when I log into Zencastr to connect Dropbox,
Okay.
I'm logged into Dropbox through that browser. So I actually need to disconnect from that browser, which now I am. SAHDPod. And that should be the correct password. Sign in. Okay, now I am in Zencastr, and you can see that the Dropbox that is connected to this Zencastr account, which is the SAHDPod Zencastr account, is the correct Dropbox. All right, because the Zencastr account doesn't have an awful lot of storage, we cannot click the record to wave. If we click the record to wave, we'll basically blow out the amount of storage that we have. So we need to stick to MP3s, at least for now. If I look at the total space, I can see that I still have 1.26 gigabytes free, which is more than sufficient to run an hour-long podcast, or including pre- and post-show. All right, so I'm going to create a project on this end, David, and I'm just basically going to call it SAHDPod. I think I called it SAHDPod 102 before, so I'm going to call it SAHDPod 102 again.
Okay.
I'm going to create it. Now, we don't need to check David's settings on the other end because you're already correctly in Google Hangouts. First thing I need to do, turn off the VoIP. Second thing I need to do, make sure that microphone is correct. And third thing I do is to invite my participants. Again, this link should already go into Facebook events. But since we haven't got it posted for a Facebook event, we're going to send it to our other hosts, which is David Torello, through Google Chat. Here, David, here's the new one, mate.
All right.
Okay, so we see, right, David, if you just want to go through the quick checks to make sure that your microphone is set up.
My microphone is set.
Okay, good. The microphone is set. And you just want to, I'm going to talk for a little bit, at least until I register on this end, which probably shouldn't take, I beg your pardon. Let's start the record. See, there's always something that you mess up. In fact, I have a couple of times gone through my entire opening spiel before I realized that I wasn't recording. Okay. But that's the thing. If you double check, if you continue to double check, like I continued to double check for the histogram next to my, well, not my name in this case, the name is SAHDPod, I realized that I wasn't recording. Okay, so now that I know I'm recording, I know my levels are fine, I'm going to get David to speak on his end. David, again, just something about last night. What was the best thing that you enjoyed about last night's podcast?
I learned a little bit about how other people tackle vacation planning, and maybe there are things that I felt that I could imply or apply to my travel future, and just learning about what people find as an enjoyable vacation destination, things that I might want to even go check out with my family.
Okay. Okay, I'm not trying to cut you off short. It's just because I already know that you're registering now, and I can show that you are registering in the SAHDPod, and I can see your histogram. Can you see your histogram on your end, David?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Does mine also show a histogram or not? I can't remember what the co-hosts see.
Yes, it does show you your histogram.
Okay. So on that notice, I started it at the correct time. I know that it's been recorded. Now I'm going to tell you, David, that I'm actually going to stop the recording so that you can prepare for it stopping and make sure that it's uploaded on your end.
All right.
Okay, it says that it is successfully uploaded. Is it successfully uploaded on your end?
Yes, I received the pop-up successful upload, and under my name and your name both show all audio uploaded.
Okay, now what I have to do now is I have to check Dropbox. So remember I said how I said that we have to make sure that it's connected to the correct Dropbox? I am now in the SAHDPod Dropbox account on this end, David, but I'm actually through the web browser. I'm not connected through a local install. In the folder apps, Zencastr, And if I go down to SAHDPod 102, which is the podcast that David and I just recorded, I can see both my audio and his audio, so that I know it has been correctly uploaded. So I know that I used the correct Zencastr account, I used the correct Dropbox account, and both of those audio packages were saved correctly to the cloud storage. Okay, I think that basically concludes. I'm going to sign out of that account, and I'm going to log out of Zencastr, and I'm going to thank the person for coming on, which was David Torellio, for helping me actually explain this. And if it is still as clear as mud, you need to get back in touch with me. Again, some of these things change and change rather rapidly, particularly Zencastr, which is still in beta. If you have any problems at all, or if you're concerned that the product may have changed at all, contact the person who was either the previous host, or contact me. Okay, welcome back, and welcome back to David Torellio. We have a little bit more to add to the last of that video. One thing that David and I noticed when we were talking to one another is that we need to make sure that everybody is responsible for their own personal audio and personal for their audio quality. And one of the things involved in that is listening back to your audio track. Now, back when Zencastr was first starting out, everybody downloaded their own separate audio as well as the audio being uploaded to Dropbox. Okay, right now the system is set up where everything just goes up to Dropbox, and the people who were the co-hosts don't receive their audio. What we will need to do is have the person who is the host share the individual audio tracks for each of the participants so that they can listen to them separately, so that they can go over and do their own personal quality check. So for example, what I'm going to do now is I am going to go into Dropbox. So just bear with me 1 second, David.
All right.
And I'm going to sign in. And I'm going to sign in as SAHDPod. Now, what I would do in this case, David, I'm actually signing into Dropbox, and I'm going into the files that we just created. And what I would do is I would create a shareable link, and I would email that to you. And your name, what's your email address, mate?
It is D Torellio G.
Spell out your full. Hang on.
All right.
So no. Actually, you don't need to. D T R E L I O.
Correct.
At
Gmail.
I might have to blank this later, otherwise you'll get a whole lot of spam. Okay, I'm going to send that to you, David. But what we're going to do is we're going to assume that you've received it. Okay, we're going to assume that you've received it on your end. And
Okay.
what I'm going to do, since you can listen to this in almost any package that you can see the waveform, but since Audacity is free, I'm going to bring Audacity up, and I'm actually going to load it to Audacity. Okay, right. Now, since this is... Since that audio that I just talked about wasn't stored to my local Dropbox, I'm going to have to save it myself to my local drive so I can bring it into into Audacity. So bear with me, David, while I download it to the desktop. It's only a couple of minutes.
Okay.
So it is almost instantaneous. And then I'm going to show it in the folder. Well, it's on my other screen. I've got two screens here. And open that with, screw it. Let's just open up Audacity. And I'm going to open that file. It's on my desktop. It is... I've got so much rubbish on my desktop, mate. Unfortunately, it takes me a while to go through it all.
No, that's okay.
The reason that I've got you on the line is because you're actually going to listen to the same audio.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, that is SAHDPod. Cancel. Beg your pardon. I just downloaded me and not you. I'm going to download you. Same thing. And if anybody is watching this in real time and wonders why I didn't edit it, well, screw you guys. Open. Desktop. And Mr. Torellio. There we go. Okay, David, I've actually got your audio up in front of me, and I can see that there is, if I actually look through it, there's only one point where I have any sort of a click. I'm going to stretch it out, And you can also magnify the waveforms. So I've just magnified the waveform then. And I can also decrease that. I think you have to do the minus symbol or something like that. Anyway, not that it matters. Somebody who knows Audacity better than me can do that. But you can actually magnify the waveform so that you can actually look for the very, very small blips in it. And what you're going to hear back, David, is actually your audio. And we're going to listen back to the one point where we noticed like a glitch on the track. Okay.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
No, I did not.
Probably not, because it was very, very low. But it was a small click. And they're very, very small. A lot of those things are forgivable. Actually, let me stop that again. What I'm going to do, David, is I'm going to amplify the volume my end. Unfortunately, you're also going to get an awful lot of feedback, so just bear with me.
Okay.
No, you wouldn't have heard that either. Never mind. Okay, David. Well, the point is, the point is that there are little blemishes on it. In fact, I know what we can do. With the miracle of Google Hangouts, I am going to screen share this with you.
Yay.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, do you see this little imperfection right here?
Yes.
And I'm going to play it. You see how it jumps there?
Yes.
Those are the sorts of things I'm talking about. They're very, very, very small. And in fact, that's almost it's not important really. But this is where you notice where the little imperfections are in your track. And this is what everybody should do. They should go through.
I learned a little bit about how other people tackle
Now, if
vacation.
you see there's a little one right there too.
Tackle vacation.
There's probably not much you can do about that. The ones that I'm really more concerned about are the people who are like, they tap their fingers or they click or, they rattle or something's very, very loud. But the point being is when people come along later on and they want to see where the problems lie in their audio, that's what they should be looking for. And by magnifying it, and you can see I have magnified it on your end. Okay, I've magnified it to the point where it's ridiculous now. And I don't know how to unmagnify it. Oh, here we go. Yes, I do. It's reverse click. Okay. But you see, that's what your audio would That's what your audio would normally look like. It goes up to 1 decibel. And this is what you're looking for. You're looking for these little imperfections in your line. And when you find them, you investigate them. And once you found out what it is, if it's something that's repetitive or it's something that you don't know that you're doing, like a click or something like that, basically try and stop doing it. Okay, David, I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you. I think we've done enough damage today. People can listen to this until they go to sleep at night. Hey, I'd like to thank David for joining me back again, David, and I'm going to stop recording.
All right.
All right.